October is winding down, but we are just getting started with a new week of CNN Student News. I'm Carl Azuz. First up, figuring out who's at fault for this current financial crisis. We've mentioned some of the solutions the government is trying to turn things around. President Bush is planning to host an international summit. Congress is talking about a new stimulus plan. But who's responsible for getting us into this mess? Well, Randi Kaye has been looking at some of the biggest culprits, and she says the blame, at least partially, is on you and me.
It was the ride you thought would never end. The spending spree you've grown accustomed to. Bigger homes, fancier cars, more credit cards than you could count.
We took on too much credit. It was part of the American dream that we were convinced we needed to be part of.
For many, that dream is now a nightmare. In September, more than 80,000 homes were foreclosed on, a 71% spike from the year before.
We had the ability now to get cheap and easy credit. It's like somebody offering you crack. You don't have to buy it.
But we did. The Federal Reserve says the average family in the U.S. is nearly $80,000 in debt, including mortgages. That's about $2 trillion nationwide. And consumers are saving less than ever. In the last 4 years, you've saved less than 1% of your income.
We didn't save for a rainy day because for so long we didn't see that rainy day. And now it's pouring and nobody bothered to stop to buy an umbrella, even if you could charge it to your credit card.
We know it's not all your fault. You've been bombarded with offers of cheap credit and bigger home loans. But consumers seem to have lost any sense of discipline.
At some point, personal responsibility needed to kick in, and you needed to say, you know what, I really can't afford this.
But with all this easy credit, how could you? Especially when your neighbor's house is bigger, your best friend drives a nicer car. Instant gratification. Easy credit makes it possible. Remember when you had to actually save up for what you wanted? Now you just charge it. Credit card approval takes minutes. And those fancy cars, instead of buying them since you couldn't really afford them, you started leasing them.
Car leasing was a contributing factor to our idea that we didn't have to cut back. You could always get more than you thought you could afford.
Living beyond your means has earned you, the consumer, a place among our 10 most wanted culprits of the collapse. Randi Kaye, CNN, New York.
Okay, so if living beyond your means, buying bigger homes, bigger cars, can be a bad thing, then one solution may be to downsize. But some homeowners are taking that to the extreme, condensing their lives into less space than the classroom you're sitting in. Thelma Gutierrez takes us on a tour of a new tiny trend in housing.
Some Americans are unloading their possessions and they're learning to live small for peace of mind. In the middle of California wine country, Bill Castrinos is learning less is more. How many square feet?
It's 98 square feet on the first level.
For Jay Schaefer, smaller is better. How many square feet here?
It depends on how you count it, but I usually just say 100.
They live in teeny tiny homes, not much bigger than a child's playhouse.
On this side of this room, we've got a couple of puffy chairs flanking a boat fireplace.
Oh my gosh, where do you sleep?
This is the sleeping loft upstairs.
There's barely enough room for 2 people.
A stove and a refrigerator, even a little toaster oven.
But Jay and Bill say owning a tiny house is the trade-off for living without debt.
Oh, I'd say I'm living on less than $15,000 a year, mortgage-free.
Jay says thousands of people across the country are unloading clutter and getting rid of big houses to join the small house movement.
I look around and I do see a lot of people who seem like they're slaves to their homes.
Jay says purging allowed him the freedom to walk away from a job he didn't want.
I didn't want to pay rent or a mortgage forever, so my plan was to escape the rat race.
Now he designed small homes for people who want a scaled-down version of the American dream.
Above the kitchen is the access to the loft.
This is the toilet shower, and imagine climbing a ladder to bed every night.
Are you making a political statement here, or is this about being practical?
It's both. It's a very practical thing for me. If I didn't have a 100-square-foot house like this, I probably couldn't afford to live in this county. Aside from that, politically speaking, I like the idea of showing people how little a person could need.
I think our air conditioning unit needs to be raised up a little bit.
Bill and Sharon Castrinos joined the movement out of necessity.
We had a construction business in Southern California, and things started slowing down with the economy.
So they started building small homes. In 6 months, they've already sold 11.
What do you think you gain in exchange?
I think the freedom. It's a tremendous burden that's off your shoulders. Small is okay, and it might even be better.
So what's the average cost for a tiny house? They range between $15,000 and $45,000, and you can park them pretty much anywhere you can park an RV.
See if you can ID me. I'm a private home that's open to the public. My first residents moved in back in 1800. I've survived 2 fires since then, but my outside walls are still the same stone from my original construction. My address, 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. I'm the White House, home of the U.S. President.
In January, the White House will have a new resident, either Senator Barack Obama or Senator John McCain. This week, we're going to be looking at where these presidential candidates stand on some of the big issues, starting with the war in Iraq. Senator Obama, who was a state senator when the conflict began, opposed using military force in Iraq. He also opposed sending additional troops in 2007, a strategy known as the Surge, although Obama later admitted it helped lower violence. If elected, Senator Obama has said he'll gradually pull U.S. troops out of Iraq, with most American forces moved to other locations by the summer of 2010. Senator McCain voted for the use of military force in Iraq. He was one of the earliest supporters of the 2007 troop surge and believes it was a turning point in the war. Senator McCain has said he doesn't believe in setting a timetable for moving U.S. forces out of Iraq, but he does not want to keep them there a minute longer than is necessary. There are lots of ways to show your support for a candidate or his position on the issues: T-shirts, bumper stickers, online groups, you name it. There's another medium, though, music, that has been a time-tested way for Americans to express their political views. Jill Doherty chimes in with a report on campaign songs.
Presidential campaign songs don't necessarily win elections, but they can sure help rev up excitement among a candidate's supporters, in person or on the web.
It was whispered by slaves and abolitionists as they blazed the trail toward freedom. Yes, we can. Yes, we can.
Turns out campaign songs are as old as America, like this one for America's first president, George Washington.
God save great Washington, his word from every tongue demands applause.
His supporters simply lifted the music from the British God Save the King.
You're going to hear good old American partisan passion.
Professor Patrick Warfield of Georgetown University put together a whole show based on campaign songs. Here's what supporters of Abraham Lincoln were singing when he ran for president in 1860.
Hurrah for the choice of our nation, our chieftain so brave and so true. We'll go for the great Reformation, for Lincoln and liberty too.
There was negative campaigning back in those days, too. Songs about candidates drinking or womanizing. There were show songs that became political songs.
My country's wild about Harry, and Harry's wild about
cannot do without both my country and me.
Campaign songs these days often are less about the candidate, more about themes. The way the world might look if they were president. Jill Doherty, CNN Washington.
Before we go, we are releasing the hounds. That might sound more terrifying if this costume canine wasn't dressed up like a bowl of fruit. Masquerading mutts don't get to have all the fun at this Halloween party. A few owners showed up in matching outfits. There were creative costumes on display, including a headless horseman's horse, dog, and some standards like this Poochie princess. But most everyone seemed to have a howlingly good time. And doggone it, we're out of time for CNN Student News. We'll be back tomorrow with more. See you then.